Senator, what are your views on the direction education should take? Are you a supporter of the college and career readiness standards, aka Common Core?
Colton, the Common Core, or the career college readiness standards, are good insofar as they go. I've been honored to be part of a review board by the State Board of Education on our standards, our English language standards. We do those reviews every 7 years, and I'm representing the Senate Education Committee on that, and I've been fairly well impressed with the standards that I've been able to review. I was working on the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade standards, and I think they're pretty well done. The main thing with education standards, these have to be state standards. This is something that the state's responsible for. We set the standards, and then the school districts are the ones who actually develop the curriculum to follow those standards or to make sure that the children are learning. The bottom line on the whole thing really is that the teachers have to be treated as professionals, not as the lowest level bureaucrat in a large bureaucracy that's always growing, taking orders from above and doing what they're told.
How do you plan on turning the negative perception of public education around in Kansas?
The perception of education in Kansas has been skewed. There's been a real fight for money. There's been a political overlay to that fight that's been going on. We've had lawsuits for over 40 years concerning public education, K-12 education, and that has certainly hurt the perception of education in Kansas. There's been a little bit of a failure, I think, to emphasize the positive and to celebrate the tremendous accomplishments that have been achieved in Kansas. We have some of the best teachers in the world, certainly in the United States. Kansas students have recently been ranked in the top 10 in the nation. And so, that's pretty good considering, that's the whole nation. We've got top 10 students, and that's the Kansas Association of School Boards just put that out a little while ago.
Do you support the block funding formula? If so, how do you suggest schools deal with growth other than the Extraordinary Needs Fund?
The block funding, the block grant funding, is not really a formula. It's built on the old formula in that it was freezing the funding at a certain level with some allowance for inflation and growth built into the block grant, but there's no real formula there. It's pretty arbitrary, and it's obvious and stated attempt to stop the war over funding, and while we get down to doing a new formula that would better serve the students in Kansas. The block funding is clearly, as I say, an arbitrary thing based on the old formula. The Extraordinary Needs Fund is necessary because of the fact that you can have extraordinary needs crop up, including, as you mentioned, the rapid increase in enrollment perhaps, but there's also those cases where, in particularly some of the districts out west, where the collapse of oil prices and agricultural commodity prices have reduced the local sources of income for the schools, and those have to be taken into account.
Do you think children should all receive an equitable and adequate education no matter what the socioeconomic status is of the district they live in?
Leaving aside the fact that we don't have a good definition of equitable or adequate, I think the concept is understood. And yes, I believe that all of the Kansas children should have a fair shot at a good education, no matter where they live in the state of Kansas. It doesn't depend on their zip code or their location. They should have the resources available to be able to get an adequate education. And by that I mean an education that will allow them to continue in life into the areas that they need to go into.